India's Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway has emerged as one of the most prolonged infrastructure challenges in modern history. A decade has passed since construction began, yet the line remains incomplete. By October of last year, Indian authorities made a surprising move. They reopened the tender process and directly invited Chinese companies to participate. The response was swift and unequivocal. China declined, along with nearly every other nation with advanced rail expertise. This left India with no choice but to return to its original partner, Japan. In March, Indian officials announced they were exploring the deployment of Japan's next-generation Shinkansen, specifically the E10 series, to salvage the project. Under this revised plan, India aims to procure 10 trains, each with 24 carriages. Consistent with domestic manufacturing policies, some of these trains would be assembled in India. Authorities project partial operations could begin by 2027. However, there's a major complication. The E10 series exists largely on paper. No prototypes have been tested in real-world conditions. The pressing questions now are whether India can finally complete this railway and why China walked away from a contract worth tens of billions. The project's origins date back to 2012, when India unveiled its Diamond Quadrilateral Development Strategy. The vision was ambitious, linking major economic centers, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata, through a network of high-speed rail corridors. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad route was designated as the flagship. Initial estimates placed construction costs at 1 trillion rupees. The railway would span 508 kilometers and serve 12 stations, cutting travel time between Mumbai and Ahmedabad from over 6 hours to just 2. India opened the project to international bidding, inviting countries with high-speed rail expertise to submit proposals. At the time, China was emerging as a major force in high-speed rail. Beijing saw the project as a chance to expand influence and showcase engineering capabilities globally. In 2013, China and India signed a memorandum of understanding covering high-speed rail technology transfer, and initial planning began. Momentum seemed to be building until Japan intervened. Although Japan had been relatively quiet during the initial bidding, Tokyo suddenly offered not only technical support, but a financial package almost impossible to refuse. Japan proposed a $33.5 billion loan at a remarkably low interest rate of 0.1% per year. To put this in perspective, the annual interest on such a loan would be just $137 million, a fraction of typical infrastructure financing costs. For a developing economy with significant infrastructure needs, the offer was extraordinary. In 2015, India awarded the Mumbai-Ahmedabad project to Japan, selecting the Shinkansen system capable of speeds up to 320 kilometers per hour, with a total budget exceeding $14 billion. The financing structure heavily favored India. The central government would contribute about $1.15 billion, while the state governments of Gujarat and Maharashtra would each provide $570 million. The remaining 80%, over $11 billion, would come from Japan's concessional loan at the minimal interest rate. The groundbreaking ceremony finally took place in 2017, with completion initially scheduled for 2022. But honestly, that optimism proved premature. The project soon became entangled in India's complex land acquisition laws. Securing land across densely populated and politically diverse states turned into, well, a bureaucratic and legal nightmare. Farmers disputed valuations, local politicians leveraged the project for electoral gains, and court cases just multiplied. Construction didn't properly commence until 2021, which was 4 years behind schedule. By 2022, only 30% of the required land had been acquired, and just 10 kilometers of railway had been built. Public frustration mounted, with citizens questioning whether the project would ever be completed. International observers began labeling the Mumbai-Ahmedabad line a cautionary tale of India's infrastructure bottlenecks. The term white elephant started appearing in media coverage. Early 2023 saw significant progress in land acquisition, allowing construction to accelerate. Viaducts rose, bridge piers were installed, but by 2024, overall completion stood at only 25.6%, a stark statistic for a project originally scheduled to operate in 2022. Protests erupted along the route, with critics accusing the government of mismanagement and international commentators calling it a debacle. Under pressure, Japanese officials quietly suggested India consider other contractors to speed up work. By late 2024, India reopened the bidding process. Project costs had ballooned, with estimates exceeding $100 billion. Invitations went out to all nations with proven high-speed rail expertise, including China. China's response was immediate: no interest. Other nations followed suit. The reason lies in India's demanding terms. Since the original Japanese contract, Indian agencies had renegotiated prices and conditions. Japan initially agreed to supply 24 trains for $9.6 billion, but India pushed the cost down to $8 billion, while also requesting technology transfer and local manufacturing. India demanded that Japanese firms establish factories domestically, threatening to withhold payments otherwise. Additionally, India requested a $2.1 billion interest-free loan specifically for factory construction. On top of that, India wanted contractors to finance 80% of the total project cost, leaving the Indian government to cover just 20% upfront. These were not standard commercial terms. They offloaded almost all financial risk onto foreign partners. For China, which had already faced payment issues in other Belt and Road projects, the red flags were obvious. The final deterrent was India's tax policy. Retroactive tax laws implemented before 2021 meant new regulations could be applied to past transactions, exposing companies to enormous liabilities. Multinationals like Vodafone and Cairn Energy had already faced multi-billion-dollar demands. For Chinese firms operating under geopolitical scrutiny and navigating Belt and Road debts, the risk was simply too high. Combined with India's requirement that contractors finance most of a delayed project, walking away became the prudent choice. With China out and other nations uninterested, India returned to Japan, bound by the original contract. Japan, facing domestic criticism over loan terms, reluctantly agreed to continue. By this time, construction had reached 44%. Of the 508-kilometer line, 183 kilometers of elevated structures had been completed, along with 313 kilometers of bridge piers. The railway's framework was taking shape, but the trains themselves remained unresolved. India proposed a major shift. Instead of the proven E5 series Shinkansen operational for over a decade, it wanted the E10 series, Japan's next-generation Shinkansen designed by JR East, slated for deployment on the Tohoku line in 2030. The E10 boasts advanced earthquake-resistant technology, improved aerodynamics, and enhanced cargo features. It represents the cutting edge of Japanese rail engineering. But honestly, the problem is clear. The E10 does not yet exist in functional form. No test runs have been conducted, and no environmental adaptations have been implemented. India expects these trains to be delivered and operational by 2027, with half of the components manufactured locally. This means Japanese manufacturers Hitachi and Kawasaki must compress years of development, testing, and certification into mere months while establishing production facilities in India. Engineers have likened the challenge to asking someone who just learned to assemble a bicycle to build a spacecraft on a tight deadline. The technical hurdles are staggering. The E10 series was designed for Japan's climate, terrain, and electrical infrastructure. India's environment, however, is very different. Trains here must handle extreme heat, dust storms, and monsoon conditions. India's railway system uses a 2x25 kilovolt configuration, unlike Japan's standard setup. Early inspections of test tracks in India revealed electrical poles with a 15% tilt error, a deviation that could cause serious operational problems. Adapting the E10 for Indian conditions will require extensive redesign and testing, none of which has started. Some analysts argue that India's push for the E10 is more political than technical. After the 2024 general elections, scrutiny over the Japanese loan intensified. Citizens and opposition politicians questioned why India accepted such a lopsided deal and why progress had been so slow. The decision to switch to the futuristic E10 allows the government to reframe the project as cutting-edge innovation rather than failure. The narrative becomes, "We are not behind schedule, we are waiting for the best technology." This tactical move helps deflect criticism and buy political time. Meanwhile, China's high-speed rail program continues at an extraordinary pace. The CR-450 electric train recently completed test runs at 450 kilometers per hour, making it the fastest train on Earth. Engineers are conducting rigorous safety and performance evaluations, with commercial deployment expected within 2 years. The CR-450 represents decades of investment in infrastructure and domestic innovation. China now operates over 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, more than the rest of the world combined. The contrast with India is stark. For comparison, China completed Indonesia's Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway in just 5 years, delivering a fully operational line with mature technology and local workforce training. If India had followed a similar approach, leveraging China's supply chains and proven systems, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad corridor could already be running, with passengers making the 2-hour journey today instead of waiting indefinitely for trains that exist only on paper. Instead, Indian engineers face compatibility issues between the European Train Control System Level 2 and Japan's leaky feeder communication network. These challenges are solvable, but they require time, expertise, and coordination, resources that have been, frankly, scarce throughout this project. Meanwhile, China's technical standards have been adopted by 6 Southeast Asian nations, creating a unified regional rail network that facilitates trade and mobility. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway was intended to symbolize India's emergence as a modern, connected economy. It was meant to showcase the partnership between India and Japan and prove that mega-infrastructure projects could succeed through collaboration. Instead, it has become a lesson in misaligned incentives, bureaucratic paralysis, and unrealistic expectations. India's demands for technology transfer, local manufacturing, and concessional financing are not inherently unreasonable. Many developing nations pursue similar goals, but these objectives must be balanced against construction realities, financial risk, and technical feasibility. When a government tries to extract maximum advantage, pushing down costs, demanding interest-free loans, imposing retroactive taxes, and insisting on untested technology, it creates an environment where no rational contractor wants to participate. Japan has remained committed despite the obstacles, but the relationship has been strained. Japanese firms are reportedly lobbying their government to renegotiate terms or find an exit strategy. Tokyo is reluctant to abandon the project entirely, as that would be a major diplomatic and financial embarrassment. Yet continuing under the current conditions means absorbing escalating costs and delays with no clear end in sight. For China, the decision to decline India's invitation was simple. Lessons from Belt and Road projects have taught Beijing that not every opportunity is worth pursuing. Projects need clear commercial logic, manageable risk, and willing partners. India's offer failed on all counts. Chinese state-owned enterprises are accountable to Beijing, but also expected to operate with financial discipline. Taking on a project where 80% of costs fall on the contractor in a country with retroactive taxation and political uncertainty would have been reckless. The implications go beyond a single railway. India requires trillions in investment to modernize its roads, railways, ports, and power grids. Attracting capital depends on predictable legal frameworks and a track record of completed projects. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad saga sends the opposite message. Projects in India are prone to delays, shifting demands, and political interference. Infrastructure is foundational to economic growth. Countries that move goods and people efficiently gain competitive advantages in manufacturing, services, and innovation. China recognized this decades ago, investing heavily in interconnected provinces and export-oriented urban centers. India, despite a young population and democratic system, has struggled to replicate this success. The high-speed rail project was meant to be a turning point. Instead, it risks becoming a cautionary tale. As of now, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad line remains a work in progress. Elevated tracks stretch across the landscape, incomplete and unused. Bridge piers wait for rails that may not arrive for years. The E10 trains are still conceptual, and their suitability for Indian conditions is uncertain. Hitachi and Kawasaki engineers are working on solutions, but the timeline is aggressive to the point of being unrealistic. If the trains are delivered on schedule and function as intended, it will be a remarkable achievement. If not, the project may slip further into chronic delay. India's high-speed rail dream hangs in suspension, not fully abandoned, yet far from operational. The promise of a 2-hour commute between Mumbai and Ahmedabad remains enticing, but ambition alone does not build railways. Execution, financial discipline, realistic planning, and commitment are required. Until these align, India's first high-speed railway will remain what it has been for the past decade, a symbol of ambition outpacing capacity and a reminder that infrastructure miracles require more than good intentions.